Hello, everyone. Welcome to Built by BIPOC. I'm Carissa Begonia, founder of Conscious Exchange. I'm a second generation Filipino American daughter of immigrants, a diversity, equity, inclusion practitioner, and a business and leadership coach for BIPOC professionals and entrepreneurs. I started Built by BIPOC because I'm tired of hearing there isn't enough BIPOC talent out there. I'm also tired of often being the first, the only, the other, in spaces that I tend to find myself in. So here, I'll be highlighting the journeys and the practices of BIPOC entrepreneurs and company leaders who are claiming their seats at the table or building their own tables and advancing DEI at work. I am so excited to introduce you today to my friend Kris San. Kris is a positioning consultant, helping creative entrepreneurs build, launch, grow their brands in the most efficient way while staying in alignment with their true selves. She grew up in Puerto Rico and moved to Austin in 2010 and is really passionate about community, art, and creating transformative products and businesses and experiences. Kris shares that her Puerto Rican culture is ingrained in everything she does, and she's an advocate for BIPOC creators because of it, especially Latino creatives. So welcome, Kris. Thank you so much for being my very first guest here on Built by BIPOC. Why don't you go ahead and share with the audience a little bit more about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. Obviously, as being the first one in a lot of things, this is, nothing new to us. So I love this. Thank you so much for reaching out. And yeah, basically, you really summed it up about like where I am today. But mostly, I come from Puerto Rico. I grew up there my whole life. I came to Austin, Texas in 2010. I was already, mid 20s. So it was kind of like that seeking more opportunity and living in a place where it's so controlling and everything is just so monopolized. It was so good to like just come to a place where like everything seemed possible. I actually didn't even know about like racism or being different or anything because being Puerto Ricans, I feel like are like almost like a little bit unique too and from the Latin side where like we all were so different colors. We were all different. We were all black, yellow, white, everything. Blue eyes, green eyes, dark, everything. So to me, it was normal to see people that were different from me, but we shared the same culture, the same upbringing, the same experiences. And also like it's not the same when you're, raised in the country versus in the city. Like there's also all those differences, right? But to me, I didn't see it as like the only thing that was different about me or growing up was the gender side because I was an athlete. So that being in a heavy masculine world, I was kind of shamed for that a little bit growing up and stuff like that. But anyway, it wasn't like that big of a deal because I was always taught to persevere, and that's just in my nature to just like go with it. And so anyway, I just came here, and it just like was a whole new world. Like just knowing that like I had to be really careful with what I said so people wouldn't get offended, or I just didn't know any of that, and it took a lot of years to really understand like how that whole thing worked. But I never saw it as something debilitating. I always saw it as like something that was I was empowered and I was given a gift to persevere throughout all those challenges. And the bigger the obstacles, the bigger the reward. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks so much for just giving a little bit more
Yeah.
color to like how, just even like acclimating over here in the US, right? When you came over and just kind of getting like learning different norms and such, and how that could be a potential kind of like barrier or struggle. But like you said, immigrants, children of immigrants, like there's a perseverance that we learn from all of that. And yeah, that really helps us in business and helps us become really strong leaders. And that the resiliency that we just kind of inherently like just build up and learn from our being, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, and then sharing also how you said like feeling other maybe from a gender standpoint and like your athleticism and such, and that kind of maybe stigmas or whatnot that you encountered from that. I often talk a lot about feeling like or being the first, the only, the other in spaces and how I like maneuver. To get asked a lot, like how did you maneuver through those like spaces, predominantly white spaces, right? And succeed as a woman of color. And so it sounds like you have also experienced that yourself and would just love to hear a little bit more about, some time, like a time or moment or so where you really did find yourself being that other person in the room, the first or the only in the room, like what did that feel like? and how did you kind of navigate those spaces? And ultimately, how did that shape you and how you kind of move through the world today?
Absolutely. So, a lot of personal development work, a lot of personal growth within myself because, having talent or being really good at something or giving everything your all and not seeing the same level of opportunities come back at you that other people are doing, that other people may be getting for just knowing somebody or for just existing. It just really showed me, it just like when you're constantly underestimated, it's just like there's some point where like I have to look within and be like, this cannot, am I going to quit? Am I going to give up? Or am I going to find a way to find peace within myself about this? This has nothing to do with me. This was here long before I existed. And so how do I deal with this now, right? How do I take this and make it part of my story, but then make sure that the people behind me don't get to push as hard. They don't have to push as hard because we've done that work for them by the position that we've been given. So that's kind of how I see it. I just see it as it's taken a lot for me to accept that this is the card that I was dealt, and how can I take it and make myself better for it, and also make it easier for others.
Yeah, a pretty typical kind of, I guess, response or just kind of driver for folks that I like, people of color that I meet, is this deep desire to give back for exactly those same reasons, right? Like, I struggled, and this is what I went through, and part of my mission out in the world is to not, and with the work I do or as a leader, is to help people not struggle the way I did, or to make it just a little bit easier. And maybe perhaps we learn that from our parents or just like the people around us. I know there's kind of a couple of different ways I want to go here, but maybe the first one will be, um, it's not always kind of like you said, kind of you struggle in the beginning and like you struggle to even like accept it, right? And this show is really also about celebrating our cultural identities. I know for myself that I wasn't always so proud to be Filipina. I wasn't even really fully aware of how my identity impacts the way both I am viewed in the world and how I move through the world, whether that's conscious or subconsciously. And so I'm curious for you, was there a moment also where you became aware, you were made to become aware of your cultural or racialized identity? Maybe in Puerto Rico, you're like I'm Puerto Rican, like that's it, right? And then you come to US and oh, okay, there's just all different cultures and such. And people might make you realize that you are, again, different or some like or Puerto Rican or whatnot, right? So just curious again, like a moment that you had where you became aware of that, and what impact did that have on you, whether that's positive, negative, and how did you find like eventually come to embrace it and find power in your identity?
No, that's a great question. I think that the world, especially when you're different or you're another or you're somebody that from a different culture, it wants to constantly remind you that you are different. And so I, as a Puerto Rican growing up in Puerto Rico, there's so much pride that we have in ourselves and our culture. So I came to the United States as a very, very proud person. And so it was almost like I get here and I'm like, yes. And it's just like I'm ready for all the things, and then getting knocked back, getting punched in the face, people telling me that you can't do this. I didn't know anybody. It's taken me, what, I've been in Austin 12 years, and just now I'm starting to like really see the network that I've created over the last decade, and the people that are there for me. Like, that's taken so long because I've started from scratch. So it was this thing about, for me, I just had to realize that it was like, and we're not even going to talk about the LGBTQ side, right? We're just, because that's a
You
whole
can
other
if you
thing.
like.
I mean, it's just like a whole other component. It's just because, once again, whatever boxes the world has created for you, then you as an individual, if you fit any of those boxes in their mind, then now you have to attach that to your identity, and you have to figure out how you're going to work within it. Or, you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, we have to work with other people. I would love to go create my own island. That's not possible right this second, right? So anyway, so just like working within that and not letting that restrict me based on what other people think those limitations are for me, but then standing in my power and really just once again just using it as my fuel and just making sure that we're creating companies that are truly inclusive. And for something to be truly inclusive, you have to break yourself down as a human being every single day. So that would be my response.
Powerful words there, Kris. You kind of were getting to another part of the question that I was curious about of the expectations, right? People of color have to work harder than our counterparts to just prove ourselves, right? And you're kind of alluding to that. Do you have any stories that you can share about, or examples of, yeah, here's where I was told that you can't do that or you're not supposed to do that, and you know what, they underestimated you, and you're like, forget it, I'm going to prove you wrong, you know?
Yeah, no, I had a very powerful story around that when I was working with a startup company. It was years ago. And I gave everything. I gave everything to these people, everything that I had. It was in a moment in my time as a creator where I didn't even fully embrace myself as an artist, as a creator. I was very vulnerable. I was looking for my tribe. I was looking for the people that were going to give me the opportunity to shine and teach me the things that I didn't know. And I thought that I have found that with this group of people. And I gave them, once again, every blood, sweat and tear that I could possibly give them, thinking that I was investing into this future, this unknown that was going to blossom. And they ended up basically dropping me or saying like, you're too green, you don't know enough, you're not you're not giving us what we need, when I was like literally giving them so much. I just didn't know how to articulate it or communicate it. I didn't know how to communicate my value. And so because I didn't know how to do that, it was basically, I was not good enough. I was not good enough. And that was a really hard moment for me because I have been working at that point for 5 years on me as an entrepreneur, acquiring all these different set of skills, whether it's video, marketing, operationally, customer experience, all these different things. And so for you to work so freaking hard and someone to tell you that you're still not good enough because you're not creating these massive results, that how could you do not have the capacity to do that, you're still developing. There was no grace for that, there was no vision for that. And so I and yeah, and it was in a room, there was all kinds of different people in that involved in that story. But the point is that like it was a point in my time where I would either break, I would either fall back, I would either go and get a job and just live, whatever life, like a more simpler life or a less hectic life, or I was going to go and I was going to push through that, and that was going to be the defining moment in my story, where I would never ever let anyone demean me or underestimate me because I did not know how to communicate my value. So I made sure that I was able to communicate well, and that was part of that process.
I feel that fire and that just like motivation just coming out of you, Kris, of like never again. I think I similarly have experiences with that where I was told no, or I was told like you can't do that, or you actually do have to work harder. And like in one example, like, yes, I am making you work harder than everyone else, and just blatantly like what was happening here, right? It's just kind of a moment of shock. And it does fuel you, I think, to say, hey, I'm no, like this stops here. Like there's no more of this, right? And sometimes we have to learn that hard lesson. We have to experience that. And often, we're just shocked, like what just happened, and can't respond in the moment. But I think it's what we kind of can take back and sit with and remember. I often, when I teach a lot of my clients, hey, like know your values, to your point, like be able to communicate your values, yes, but also what are they in the first place? So often when people come to me with like, I want to start a business, or I want to move into another leadership position, and or they want to leave their company, right? And I ask them, okay, like what are you looking for? What are you looking to do? What are the values that you really have? And two things really come up. One, good question, Carissa. I'm not really sure what my exact values are. I'm like, wait, so you don't know your values are. the values that are plastered on the wall or in your like employee handbooks at your companies, right, for your company, but you don't know your personal values. So that's one-ish thing. And then two, the response is, I never really had a moment to think about it, right? Because we're just going and we're just running. So thank you for sharing that, like how important it is to know what your values are, one, and then also two, to communicate them. And you can be much more discerning, again, who you tend to work with next, whether that's going to another company or choosing clients and such, right? So thanks for sharing that valuable, I think, piece of wisdom right there, everyone. I wanted to go back to like kind of that initial question. You were talking about like people who helped you and such, and I know you talk a lot about your mom.
Yeah.
And so would love to maybe just hear about, whether it's her or just someone else, maybe other folks that you want to shout out. Like, we don't do this alone, right? We don't try to continue building things on our own, because we know how important community is, especially maybe when we're new to a city and newer to a company, new to a country, right? So would love to just hear about like any folks who have really helped you in your journey, and really supported you along the way.
100%. So my mom definitely has been a huge source of just guidance, inspiration. She has believed in me. And although I say all these things now, right, because we've gotten to this place now, we had a very rocky relationship, and there was like a lot of it that was like we didn't even know if this was even going to be possible. But the one thing that my mom, no matter what, all the things that she didn't understand, because my mom is 100% through and through corporate life. Like, she is like 35 years in HR for like the biggest pharma companies. And then here comes little Kris, like super rebellious, and everything needs to be different and difficult. And I just can't go with the current. And so it was like a big battle between us. And now we're best friends, and we talk all the time, and I'm helping her with her business, and she gives me wisdom about organizational design and how to create these beautiful cultures and companies that are rooted in inclusivity and grace and really people's strengths. And so it's such an awesome thing. So she's definitely been someone that, like, no matter how rocky it's been, she's never stopped being my mom. She's never quit on being my mom. And that is the most that I could ever ask from anyone. It's just, to never give up on you, kind of thing. And then the other person that I absolutely have to shout out, because you did say multiple people, is my mentor, Bryant Walker. This man has changed my life in the last 17 months. He is, I mean, when I came to him, I was doing video, I was just doing video and these things and that. And he's just taken me to a whole other level and taught me messaging, taught me positioning, taught me context. We don't even, he created the word, like, we don't even create content no more. We're context creators, right? Because without context, what are you saying doesn't even make any sense, right? So he's just like really elevated me to levels that I couldn't even fathom that I was going to be at. And so he's just been a big part of my journey in this next stage of my career. And so I'll always, 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 always be so thankful for him.
Yeah. Oh, that was so good. I know, I love the journey of, your relationship with your mother. And, I feel like I'm also that rebellious kid that I don't want to be a Filipino nurse. I just don't want it. I don't want to do anything in the medical field. And, the entire family is medical. And, even when I left to do my like own business, I think there was, again, a lot of fear and such. And it's pretty awesome that, despite, again, whatever kind of butting of heads you've had with your mom, that she's one of your best friends now. And also how wonderful it is to be able to learn from someone, that you trust so much, right? Like, that she is in HR, that she works probably doing DEI work in some capacity, right? Whether it's probably indirectly, but yeah, that she knows at least what you're talking about, right? When
Mhm.
you're doing what you do. And that's really, really helpful to not have to explain to maybe, your parents or whatnot so much about yourself, or at least about your work, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's really awesome that you have that support. Another piece too that you said about how important it is to have mentors. Kind of want to go through that, process. Like, so often I'll get DMs and such about like how to find mentors, how to get into a new role, how to get into the diversity, equity, inclusion space, like how to, right? And as a coach, even that's what I'm doing, right? I'm always teaching someone how to do something, how to start a business, whatever, right? I would love to hear from you, like, any kind of tips, or like how did you find your mentor, right? And how can one also like find their mentor? Like, what is important when you're vetting the people that you're going to work with, or who you will deem as a mentor and listen to and trust, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I am a big fan of the whole mentorship relationship. I am a big fan, and I'm going to be that person that has like 10 of them, one for each little area of my life. But for me, it was like, it's literally like dating 100%. And if you don't know what you want in a relationship, and you don't know yourself enough to understand what are the things that you need, the things that you value, then it's going to be much harder to find that right person, right? But before you get there, like anything that you don't know how to do, you just got to start doing things. And I believe that I believe we all as human beings have this internal compass that guides us on what the next thing is. And we just have to trust it enough to lead with it, to go into the unknown, right? And then each step is going to like give you your next step once you take that step. And that is literally how it was. I met this person because they referred me to them for something. I started a relationship with that person. That led me to going in and seeing this community that I'd never been into. And this led me to buying a ticket to their summit, and Bryant was one of the speakers. And at the end of it, they were like, they're available for mentorship, and I took the plunge. And it was, once again, just like being guided by thing. I didn't know what was going to come about it. I had zero expectations, but I knew and the more you listen to that, and you take those steps and trust that, the stronger it becomes. And so now I'm at this point where I'm just like, it don't matter where I'm going. I'm just going to make sure that I'm being led. And even if it's something that ended up and it broke my heart or it hurt me or whatever, that was something that I needed to go through, so then it could give me the courage for the next thing. And so that's how I do it.
Yeah. A couple things I took out of that, probably the main one really is like trusting that intuition, right? Like doing things that scare you or that are out of your comfort zone, but then trusting that good things will come from it, right? That you're going on a path and a journey, and that it is a path and it is a journey, and that this is not linear, right? So you make one move, right? You take one step forward, and then be open enough to see where that leads you, And maybe another point I took out of this is like how important connection is. Like you talk about, like someone referred me to this person, and I like built a relationship. I went off and did this like event, the summit, boom, 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 right? And I think that's so important. And this is why, I believe in the power of LinkedIn, or the power of networking in general, but like how easy it is, again, just to connect with folks here. People to connect with you right now, right? On like right now, because it is about referrals. It is about just connecting with folks and just asking a question. They could say no, but you never know until you try, until you ask, right? I did see in the chat one question from Dan Roth. Do you think the lack of acknowledgement of personal values leads to not asking for fair pay? I bring this values question back up just because I know you kind of said it's how important it is about to know who you are, right? So, and I believe you know who you are, like by kind of really being very firm and clear on what your values are. So I know those are addressed to me, but like, do you have any thoughts on that too?
Repetition breeds confidence, right? So the more that you do something, like if I'm going for a role at this point in my life today, I need to understand what those pay scales are, what my skill set is compared to what they're asking. You know what I mean? I just have to I have to have all the context, all the information, and then I go in there very sure on what I want. And if they're not willing to give me what I want, then that's not going to be a match, right? So I was never like this. I was always just like, give me what I can get. You know what I mean? Like, just throw me the pennies. Like, at least I'm in here. At least I'm doing something. Like, that's cool. And it's just like, why? Why do I have that attitude when I've busted myself in like gaining all of these things and I've created this such a value proposition for myself as a human being and what I can bring to the table, you know? So I don't know. I think it has to do more with like a confidence thing and understanding like that role and what the pay scales are and like where do you fall within it and just I know people that have to be constantly doing certifications just to feel worthy.
Mm.
Like if they don't, I have one bachelor's degree that I've never used in my whole life, and everything has been results. If I can produce results, why do I need the 10 certifications? Unless I'm going to be like a doctor or something, right? It just doesn't make any sense. So I think that's more of like a look within situation and find where those gaps are.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Kris. Yeah, I agree with you that I think it can be partly not knowing values, but again, I think it's that moment we don't take to really assess what that even is for us. Why do we have resistance for asking for what we're worth? Why do we think we need external validation from accolades and degrees and such to say I'm valuable? One thing I like, kind of the last thing I wanted to ask before we start to wrap up here is, um, you know, I'm all about the inspo here and magic and such. And, one of the things I would love for you to kind of share, you've been dropping some wisdom like nuggets like all throughout, but last thing maybe to share like a practical tip for any entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs out there, any folks from your past when you were kind of, again, just working in companies, corporate America, startups and whatnot. So any practical tip that can help someone move forward.
From where?
From wherever their starting point is now. whatever your angle that you want to take it from. If it's from like an entrepreneurship standpoint, if it's from a leadership standpoint, what's one practical tip?
Okay, well, because that's very vague, I will have to do the thing that I tell anybody that is anywhere, which would be taking stock and inventory of your entire life, yourself, where you've been, everything that's happened that's led you here, every decision, every road, every path, the person that you're with, that whole situation, your family, like everything, your home, your environment, where you go, the people that you hang out with, everything. That is the first step, is to understanding where you want to go, is to take stock of where you've been and where you are.
That's a huge big tip. So thank you for taking my generality and make it really specific. I absolutely think that is definitely a first step for folks. If I want to change my situation, like, well, what is your situation, right? And where have you been? Like, what is the past also, and that has brought you here? Because there's so much, like, again, information, data. Former analyst here, data and information that'll help us make the choices that we want to move forward with.
And we need the data. If you want to know where, like, if, for example, if I'm unfocused and I'm like, my whole day's going and I'm not even accomplishing the things that I need to accomplish, well, then the first thing that I need to do is not shame myself for it. It is use the next week to track every 15 minutes of my day. So then I understand what is actually happening, right? And I can see the gaps, because that's what we need to do. We need to identify the pattern. So absolutely, back to the data. Everything is data, and we need data on ourselves as much as we need data in our businesses.
Yes, yes. Well, thanks so much, Kris. So just kind of starting to wrap up here. Sometimes, for some podcasts I listen to and other kind of shows, I love when people do like kind of a rapid fire round. So wanted to see if you were down to play, like to do a rapid fire thing with me.
Let's go.
Let's do it. Okay, cool. So ready? All right. I wasn't supposed to.
Be great.
The future I am building is
Inclusive.
and I am most grateful for.
Everyone and everything.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kris, for being my very first guest here on Built by BIPOC. For all those of you listening and who do not know, Kris actually was the kind of inspiration for me to get this moving. I've had this idea in my head for, months. And whatever fears, insecurities, and such was holding me back too from just putting this out there. And after conversation, really kind of she helped me outline like how does this work? Like how does a podcast work? How do you do video well and all that? That gave me a lot more confidence to just put myself out there, do things that make me uncomfortable and try, right? So thank you so much, Kris. Like so appreciate you for your support and your
Appreciate you.
encouragement. Lastly, we are celebrating Latinx Hispanic Heritage Month coming up on September 15th. Question for you, are you doing anything special for Latinx Heritage Month that you would like to share?
Working with some local organizations on some stuff for sure. We haven't created all the promotional material yet, so I'm not at liberty to discuss in depth. But we're definitely going to be out there. We're going to be doing stuff. I'm super excited for everything that's happening in Austin, Texas. Just culturally, creatively, all the amazing people that are here just doing the damn thing. And I'm just so proud and grateful to be a part of that movement.
Awesome. Yes. Okay. Well, follow Kris for all of the happenings that might be going on in Austin, Texas. I'm also very intentional about doing this particular show on LinkedIn Live because of how easy it is for people to directly connect right here. So for those of you listening right now, click, connect, follow Kris. Also, with that, how else can people learn more about you and your work and how they can get in touch with you?
Beautiful. Yeah, LinkedIn right now is going to be like that best place. I'm getting geared to do a whole new content push and kind of getting really clear and focused with my personal direction with my business. Because at this point we can go so many different ways, but I know exactly where I want to go now. And yeah, just stay tuned for some amazing stuff coming our way. So yeah, that's
Amazing.
what I was saying.
Again, thank you so much, Kris. And then thanks everyone for joining in on this, again, very first episode of Built by BIPOC. This was fun. I had fun. Did you have fun?
I had an amazing time. Thank you for being an amazing host and asking hard questions, but necessary questions. So I love these conversations and I'm excited to see more.
Thank you so much. These are going to be weekly. Replays are available. So when you see the next event pop up in the next day or two, hit attend so you can get notified of the replays if you can't join us live. Otherwise, we'll see you next Wednesday, same time, same place. Invite your friends, and let's go build things together. Bye, everybody.